Okay, welcome back to the third part. First we have Deadly Confrontation. This card is pretty awesome and probably the best card of the cycle after Snow Pelting. We get a sorcery speed, a spell speed, Death Strike that requires a third Shadow influence, makes it a bit more limited, but being able to pay 2 more to use this on another thing, basically having like a 6 cost kill two enemy units and having to exhaust an unseen to do this is amazing. And if you ever get to a situation where you get to kill 3 things with this, it's incredible. I already played a bit with the card and it can just be game breaking. So if you have a bunch of unseen in your deck and look for some removal, I recommend putting at least 1 or 2 of these in your deck, because they can simply just win a game on their own. Super powerful card, and in limited, it's already good without any unseen. If you factor in a couple of unseen, this quickly becomes bomb level. Next we have Devastating Setback, a card we already discussed during spoiler season. Not super exciting, but the flexibility is decent. We get both a Sabotage as a 4-cost spell, which is a pretty bad deal, but the primary use of the card is going to be the -2/-2, which is basically a better Lightning Storm, in the sense that it at least cripples the units it doesn't kill and makes them less of a threat. So this is a more universal board answer than Lightning Storm is, and if there's nothing that you want to use it on, you can always just use it as a overcosted Sabotage. All in all, I still think the card might be a bit on the expensive side, or rather the first mode a bit on the weak side. But yeah, all in all, it might just be flexible enough to make it in a deck here and there. I wish the first mode would be something like the opponent discards 2 cards of their choice instead of the Sabotage effect. Then it would have just the right amount of impact on both modes and would make for a pretty sweet yet balanced card. And in limited, this is pretty good because both effects are nice enough and the power level standards are different. So yeah, pretty nice limited card. Still not great or anything, but better than in Constructed and more versatile. Next we have Devious Drone, basically a spell speed Death Strike on Lex. Problem is, it's an Entomb thing, and 4 is just a bit too much. Like, I mean, a Death Strike that doesn't even like work on its own, it's just not that great. I mean, the 1/1 body is basically more of a downside than anything, really. And I think given how situational it is, and that it only has a 1/1 body, I think this should cost 3. It's still not gonna be insane at 3, but at 3 you can at least go turn 4, Devious Drone, Combust, kill 2 things, and get sort of a sweet deal that makes it worth it to put this in your deck over an actual Death Strike, for example. So yeah, a bit disappointed by the conservative ratios on this card, but it is what it is. And I mean, in limited, it's still a removal, so you're gonna put it on your deck, even though it's not the most reliable and best timeable one. Then we have Extinguish, another mediocre Nightfall card. Here we get to kill a unit with 4 attack or less, so basically a bad Suffocate, since we get to pay 4 times the power and only get like 1 attack upgrade in terms of what we can kill, and then we have Nightfall attached to this clunky card, making this card much worse in slower, more reactive decks that care more about expensive removal like this, unfortunately. So clearly not Constructed playable. In limited, you're gonna put it in your deck, but you probably most of the time wish it wouldn't have Nightfall rather than have Nightfall, but I feel like that's a lot like that with a lot of Nightfall cards, really. It's weird that the Nightfall cards are usually weaker or cheaper, weaker or more expensive than they would be without Nightfall, as if Nightfall was a clear upside, which it clearly isn't. So yeah, I'm not super happy about the ratio calculations on a lot of Nightfall cards, honestly. Next we have Final Shot Rioter. Just an okay limited 4-drop, basically a 4-cost 2/4 gunslinger in a deck with enough gunslingers to trigger the ally, making it a pretty annoying and nice blocker. Without the deadly, he's pretty underpowered, so make sure you have enough gunslingers, but then feel free to put it in your deck. It quickly becomes close to a premium common in draft, I think, if you can reliably turn it on, because it's a really annoying blocker. Next we have Street Leecher, another gunslinger that I feel like is a bit underwhelming and falls short in Constructed. The 3/4 Warcry 4/4 is just not what you're looking for in Constructed, even as a gunslinger. The ultimate kind of neat, but neat is the right thing. Sure, it's free in the sense that you only need to put a weapon on it, you don't need to pay any actual activation cost, but the effect is also pretty small, giving an enemy unit and each copy in hand and deck -1/-1 is just too marginal to justify the rather undercosted stats. Like, I think this would need to be a 3-drop, and then it would be pretty good in Constructed. Still wouldn't be like broken or anything, I think, but it would be a premium Constructed card, and this way it's just a bit of a Constructed letdown. In Limited though, you're always gonna put this in your deck. A 4-cost 3/4 Warcry alone is already pretty decent, and the ultimate is a nice freebie on top. Next we have Vainglory Patrol, a pretty bad flyer by most standards, but a 3/1 flyer for 4 with a relevant unit type in Valkyrie. It's just good enough to make it into about every draft deck in the end, although the 1 health is making the patrol pretty fragile and a bit unreliable at times, but it's still a 3-power flyer and a Valkyrie. Next we have Cover of Darkness, another bad Nightfall card basically, giving 2 of your units unblockable for 1 turn. Really not worth 5 power. Nightfall is not helping. The card is just so meh. Like, I mean, it might make its way as a filler in one or the other draft deck for the Nightfall or the finishing potential, but it's not good at doing either. Next we have Headman's X. It's basically a different spin on Oblivion Spike. It has +1/+1 for each unit in your void. That means it can have more health than Oblivion Spike, but it can also have less in situations where Oblivion Spike would already have 5 health. But, oh, actually, forget what I said, I completely missed that it's a weapon, not a relic weapon. So yeah, forget the comparison about Oblivion Spike. Headman's X just gives the unit +1/+1 for each unit in your void. That's not that great for like a weapon that costs 5. It's just, yeah, too slow, too situational. It's kind of the shadow counterpart to the fire staff that does it for each spell. And yeah, weapons like this that just give vanilla stats and that under a condition and that so expensive, it's just not good enough. Like as a relic weapon, I forgot that it's a weapon and not a relic weapon, since it's not a card I have used before yet. Yeah, as a relic weapon it would be pretty cool and an interesting competition for Oblivion Spike, but as a weapon I don't see this being relevant. In Limited, probably also a bit meh, but might be playable. Next we have Moonlit Gargoyle. So we get a 5-cost 5/3, which is already not particularly great. Then we get the also controversial Nightfall once again. And the problem is, this guy only flies at night. So if you have enough Nightfall enabling, you get a 5-cost 5/3 flyer, which is pretty nice, because that's actually pretty good in limited. I mean, in constructed, this card is not even worth talking about. But yeah, without the flying, a 5/3 suddenly looks pretty poor as a 5-drop. So I wish this card was a bit better or a bit cheaper. The way it is right now, it's very iffy, but ultimately gonna be making it in more decks than it's not making it, I think, because it's still like decent, better than a bunch of other options, but not something to be excited about. Next we have Shadowlands Tyrant, the shadow version of the 5-cost triple influence legendaries, one of the weaker ones, I would say, partially due to the 4 health, making it much more fragile, dying to Auric Runehammer, for example, and dying to much more stuff in combat, and not having any evasion. But lifesteal makes it pretty good at stabilizing or racing, and also triggering life force, and it's nice to see that his ability dealing 1 damage and then 2 and then 3 also gains you additional health for lifesteal or triggers life force. So it's potentially a nice life force enabler, but all in all the 4 health on a unit like this and no evasion are a pretty big issue. So this is one of the few of the cycle, or the only one of the cycle even, that might not make it into constructed. Like this and Feastcaller are the 2 sort of shaky ones that highly depend on how they play out in reality and if there's a proper home to support them well enough to make it. The other 3 are all pretty powerful, if not even sort of busted. And in limited, I mean, this is still a pretty strong card. I wouldn't necessarily fully consider it a bomb just because of how easy it is to kill in combat, but it's still pretty powerful. And the last card for the third part is Stonescar Scrapper, another really cool card actually. A 5-cost 4/6 is a pretty good stat line for the type of deck that would want this. Then when our Grenadins die, we gain 1 health, so it helps the grindy, utility-oriented Grenadin deck to stay alive. And then once per turn you can pay 1 and throw away 2 units, like 2 of your random Grenadins, and draw 2 cards to cash them in for more. And since a lot of Grenadins provide multiple bodies per card, this can easily pull you ahead significantly, throwing away like one Grenadin drone to draw 2 cards, just to draw like an assembly line and another card to keep going, will eventually net you a lot of free extras on top of the 2 cards you keep drawing, and a bunch of health as well. And it's also pretty important and worth noting that Stonescar Scrapper is not being exhausted to do so. So you have the 4/6 ready to block and hold off the enemy forces at the same time while you build up a powerful advantage, a resource advantage to overwhelm the opponent with. This card is really powerful and gonna be a cornerstone of the Stonescar Grenadin Sacrifice grind deck. And in limited, this card is still amazing. A 5-cost 4/6 would already be pretty nice, and the throw away 2 virtually blank guys to draw 2 new cards ability is amazing, especially without having to exhaust Stonescar Scrapper. This card is stellar in every way, really. Alright, that's it again for part 3 of the Shadow review. It's nearing its end, but don't go anywhere before you've seen the fourth and final part, coming up next.